So the question is, are you ready for questions?
I am ready for questions. Let's do it.
Do you want to throw yours first?
Oh man, all right. So these are all really thought provoking. I think, of course, it's easy for me to say that they would provoke my thoughts, but I am gonna try and there's a few. Well, we'll just get into it. We'll get into it. I don't need to qualify it with everything.
I mean,
all right.
we can give a disclaimer. I mean, we could talk about what we're doing. We're just spouting out 10 questions we pick for each other.
All mine are related to video games, and that's about as specific as it gets.
Oh, I'm excited for this, T.
All right. First question, what is the one game you never get tired of coming up with new strategies or challenges for?
Does it have to be a specific title, or can it be like games that fall
Free
together?
Form, man. For whatever answer strikes you, whether it's a game or a franchise or a genre, like just go with it. That's I'm going to be really loosey-goosey with the answers on these.
Originally, I wanted to say the Super Mario Bros. Games, and I actually think I might stick with that. 3D Mario games like Odyssey and even 64. Just
that's a great
answer. The shortcuts, man, and that could also apply to these old first-person shooters that I play. I think that's it. I'm not giving a specific game here, which is the question.
No, that's fine.
You asked which game.
Yeah, which game, or maybe a franchise.
I mean, I would say Super Mario Odyssey. That's a great game. Like, I don't find myself constantly trying to come, but when I play it, like when I'm actively playing it, I am constantly coming up with ways to reach that place. Working around the path that's there for you. So in that respect, I would say things like Quake and Super Mario Odyssey, perfect examples. You could either do a level in Quake as intended, or you can rocket jump and skip half the level. I like that type of experimentation.
Absolutely.
Seeing a place and then trying to get there, whether unreasonably or not.
Sure.
Super Mario 64, trying to walk up the slope on Battlefield.
Yeah.
That type of shit, man. Like, that's what it's all about. So, yeah, my answer is Super Mario Odyssey, Quake, and Super Mario 64. I'd say it about those 3 games.
Awesome. Let's hear your question.
That I had 3?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. So, Tyler, I'm going to explain the question after I ask it. But what is your dream game? So that means graphics from this game.
Oh, like
this game's
Frankenstein?
Frankenstein. The gameplay from this game. The music and score from that one. Or if you want to go as specific as developer, you could say it'd be developed by this company.
That's really tough. That's really tough.
I know it's really tough, but I had to... There's 10 slots, dude. I had to do something good with these, okay?
Oh, man. I would say, all right, I'm just going to build it from the ground up for you. Instead of naming elements from specific games, I'm just going to build it from the ground up.
Yeah, like walk me through.
I'm going to walk you through the dream game, okay?
Okay.
1, it's got cards. It's got a trading or deck building aspect. 2.
I knew you'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. I live for that. I really do. All right. 2, it's got a very, very, very detailed scoring and metrics system with leaderboards, achievements, rankings, everything you could want. 3, it would have to be something played like very competitively and also have a story and a casual element and also have some sort of cooperative element. You said dream game. You didn't say it had to make a lot of sense.
No. I listed off examples of elements that you could reference. That's
correct.
all. I mean, this is free.
So I would say a deck building game with a competitive element, a story mode, a co-op mode, and something that's like easy to learn, hard to master, like a very, very high skill ceiling with challenges that are basically like never ending. That's my ideal game.
Hey, fair enough, dude.
It sounds so bad to describe it that way.
Maybe you should listen back, and then maybe you can put a finger on what your soulmate game is with all of those features.
Maybe.
So that's pretty cool. So I know you got 9 more for me. So how about you pick a good one?
Have you ever learned any piece of information from a game that has helped you in your real life?
That's a really good
or
question.
any type of knowledge, anything that you've been able to, like, big or small, right? Even if it could be a recipe from a life sim game that you implemented in real life, just anything that you were able to port over.
I learned a lot. I know it's not 1-in-1, but I learned a lot about, I guess you could say, like, produce from Stardew Valley.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of
like
where I figured you would go.
I think the biggest thing I learned was not, you ballpark what seasons some things grow in. Yeah, normally that's not something I would be fully in the know about. But since the game is split up into seasons and every season, you know, the crops change up, you get into that motion and it kind of, you know, the flow of time in the game is not 1-in-1 with reality, but the seasons are what they are.
Yeah.
So I'd say, yeah, Stardew Valley, I mean, it doesn't teach you how to farm, but it certainly scales to where certain crops that take longer in real life to grow are going to take longer to grow in the game.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, a higher day count as far as harvesting, you know.
Sure.
So, yeah, Stardew Valley, man, learned a lot from that. Even if it's basic knowledge, not extensive, you know.
Awesome. What do you got for me next?
Oh man, I don't want to put you on the spot with things, man. I know you don't.
It's gonna happen. It's
particularly enjoy that. What do you recall being the first time you were fully immersed in a video game? The first time you just were pulled clean in and just almost exited this reality. I imagine you would have been pretty young, but I mean,
it's got to be, I think it would have to be once you start to get into the middle of the game in Crash Bandicoot, the first one. Like, once you start getting into the really difficult levels, it becomes unconscious, like, to play, to the point where you're just so locked in on this platforming, you know? Yeah. Because it's so hard. So, yeah, that's my answer. Crash 1.
Hey, good answer, man.
All right.
What you got for me?
Question number 3. If video games didn't exist, what would you spend your free time doing? And I think I already know the answer.
Making music, man. Making music, no question. I mean, I love making music. I haven't talked about it on the podcast really, but I mean,
even though you've made every intro and outro that we've had.
Yes, I have. I do the music for the podcast. Also have been in many bands. The only one that I'm currently associating myself with is Powers of Kiev. I mean, I'd be writing for something as far as guitar goes. I've been working a lot on Ableton. I never lose inspiration on Ableton. I mean, that's what I'd be spending my time doing, no question. Music and video games are just my passions, you know?
Yeah, I figured as much. Awesome.
But it is a good question because, I mean, we do spend quite a bit of time gaming.
Of course.
And if I had all this behind me and didn't, I'd be a pretty big phony. So, good question, T. I'm about to hit you, so just brace yourself.
I'm bracing.
What is your most desired collectible? It doesn't have to be a cartridge or a disc, but it has to be video game related. Your personal holy grail. It could be a game. I mean, just gaming collectible.
So
that's a tough one. To me, it's a tough one.
There's
that's
a few things. I'm just going to list off like 5 things.
Okay.
And then that'll help me decide. Pokemon Platinum, Pokemon Coliseum, I don't know. Stuff like that, where it's like stuff that's exorbitantly expensive now, that is just like must-haves for me. I mean, I would say those two being the first thing that jumped to my mind, just from a completionist standpoint from the Pokemon franchise, right? Like,
That's your biggest collecting endeavor. So obviously that would be something related to that. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
yeah, for sure. If it wasn't something like that, I don't know. It's hard to pick because I'm not actively desiring anything right now. That when something is absurdly expensive, I find myself like just dissociating from that, right? Where I'm like, I don't envision a scenario where I've ever actually come upon that. So it's tough to say. Those two Pokemon games are definitely the first thing that come to my mind. If I was to go with something non-Pokemon, I don't know. It would probably be something Nintendo related, like just any console I don't own, any like hardware that I don't own, right? Maybe, I don't know, just something like maybe a cool handheld, like a PS Vita or something,
Yeah.
or like a DSi, I think would be really cool.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. I don't have anything where it's like over the top, something that is just driving me crazy that I don't have access to.
I like that you gave a humble answer for this one, and that it wasn't some $3,000 holy grail.
No,
I like that.
If we included Magic the Gathering, I could just say Black Lotus, which is a card that the cheapest printing is $5,000, right, or something.
Even
Probably
I know
more
about
now.
that card. Yeah,
But I don't actively desire or covet that card. Like, if I did, I would insure it. Like, if I had that card, I would insure it and eventually probably sell it to start a business or something. Like, I don't know. Like,
desired is a strong word. That's
correct.
the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I have like, if there's something I feel like I need to have and it's reasonably priced, right, then I'm gonna buy it as a luxury expense, every once in a while. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer. We'll just go with those two games and we'll call it there.
Hey, it's an answer.
All right, here's one for you.
And you have a question.
What personal achievement or challenge in a game would you grind out if time was not an issue? For instance, like one example that I don't think you would pick, maybe it is, but like completing the entire home dex or a living dex or a shiny living dex or something. Yeah,
some type of
huge
goal.
task. For me, I could say,
if I could go into the hyperbolic time chamber.
Correct. And time.
Shout out to DBZ.
You didn't have to experience the time spent on the grind.
Oh man. I'd probably want to get on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and smash everybody's times on every course.
That's a good answer.
I think that's really what, like, if you're talking about, like I said, like a hyperbolic time chamber where I literally, any time spent grinding is not wasted time in life. I can just, that time set aside, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would go smash everybody's scores, everybody's times on every course. That's a good answer. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
That's a great answer.
I mean, I didn't mean to make it so simple, but that just seems like what I'd go do.
That's what it's about. That's a great answer.
Yeah. I knew immediately it would be something to do with times on stuff, on speed running and stuff, because that's the type of time you really have to have time for.
Definitely.
I mean, it's just, you don't just do that with minimal free time. You have to have some dedication.
Yeah.
So my next question for you, man, what is the most unenjoyable game you have ever played?
Unenjoyable.
Something that you picked up and you said, this is just fucking miserable.
Does this include games that are meant to be bad?
Define meant to be bad.
QWOP, or like getting over it. or like irritating joystick?
No.
Okay.
No, I really would like it, if you don't mind, to be unironic.
Oh man, I can't go into my Steam library. I don't know.
That's okay.
Most unenjoyable game that
Just had the worst experience with it. Just felt nothing for. I mean, it doesn't even have to be hatred. You could have just felt nothing. Because feeling nothing is unenjoyment. I mean, so it's as simple as I'm not having fun with this.
It's so funny because normally we remember negative experiences more than positive, right? With a lot of things in life, like one negative experience will stick out a lot more than than any similar positive experience. But I feel like with something like this, because a game I like, I would spend hours on, and a game I don't like, I would not. Like, it's actually hard for me to think of something. I'm racking my brain.
I always assume, I assume that this would be something you played elsewhere. I mean, or rented, something
Definitely.
you didn't got to. I could have worded it. What game was the biggest disappointment? They would have had the same outcome.
Okay. Well, all right, Sterling. What game had the biggest disappointment for me? That would be Final Fantasy VII Remake for not being turn-based.
So you didn't enjoy it?
Not one bit.
Okay, so that's your most unenjoyable game, right?
I would say right off the top, that's the first thing that snapped into my mind when you said
you were let
disappointment.
down. That's the thing about it. It goes hand in hand.
And you were there for that. You were sitting next to me when I did that.
I was.
Which
and the
is
funny
so
thing
unusual.
I already knew that. I already knew that the game was that way.
And you did,
you didn't.
And I didn't. And I was expecting, like, when it got to the first combat, I'm like, oh, yeah, let's see what this revamped turn-based system is. It's going to be so sick. And then it's like dodge, and it's like bad Dark Souls. Like, you just dodge and attack. And
I just realized I literally was sitting next to you in person.
You literally were sitting next to me in person.
Yeah. Oh, no, man. You see, that's the type of thing that hits hard because you were a fan of the original game and you were disappointed by the new presentation.
Very disappointed.
So I understand that being the pick. That didn't turn me off of the game. I mean, I haven't played it yet, but it's different, but it's new,
For me, there's no point to play. I'm going to be honest with you.
Damn, that's harsh.
Zero. What's the point? Like, what? I don't know. I just don't see for the same reason. Sterling, I have not put Origami King back in my Switch in a long time for a similar reason. It's just matters that much to me. I don't know. That's my whole desire.
You're just not enjoying yourself, right?
That's my whole desire to play an RPG, is to enjoy the mechanics of the battle system. To be honest with you, I mean, that's a big majority of it anyway.
Yeah.
So that would be it. I think that's probably as succinct as I can get with that.
Fair enough, dude. I know that was a rough one to parse out, but you did it.
Yeah, it was. Well, when you said disappointed, that's what really hit me over the head, because
they go hand in hand. Not enjoying, disappointed by,
Absolutely. So, I don't want to get into the particulars of personal lives or anything, but if you were ever to have a child or a niece or a nephew that knew nothing about video games, never played a video game before they were, maybe 4 or 5 years old, just maybe 6, starting to understand things and have some dexterity, and you're gonna, maybe it's a niece or a nephew and their parent has never gotten them into it or even shown them anything, and they say, all right, Sterling, I want you to show little Timmy or Tammy their first game. It can be anything you want. What's the pick?
I start factoring in so many things because I don't want the game to be too intricate for the kid.
Exactly. And I don't want you to harp too long on content necessarily. Obviously, we wouldn't be recommending GTA, but don't think too much from a content or graphic angle, but more from just a introductory like game for them mentally.
It's funny because we come from such different times, and I would almost want to say Tetris just because it had that effect on me. But that doesn't mean that everybody's the same as me.
It can be whatever you want, man.
So
I'm not
honestly,
asking anyone else.
I think that if I could just place a single game in their hands, it'd probably be Super Mario Odyssey.
Really?
I just think I've been friends with people who've had kids and are like, oh, you know, what game on the Switch should I get for my kid? And it's just, I don't even think about it. Yeah. It's Super Mario Odyssey, and I think that would be the game. I feel like if we were kids, that would have been the greatest thing in the world as far as where we existed with our interests and, you know. So just because we didn't have Odyssey when we were kids doesn't mean a kid now should. And I think any child that expresses any interest in video games should play Super Mario Odyssey.
Awesome.
That's the answer, man.
Nice.
Oh, but I gotta get one for you here.
Yeah,
man.
We're moving right along.
We are. What system do you have the most interest in collecting games for?
Currently,
if you had, you know, X amount of disposable income, and you, for whatever reason, had to focus on a system, I'm just curious what system, even if you picked up a new one that you don't have to collect for, where's your collector interest system wise? That's all I'm wondering.
It's so hard to pick. I would have to say probably right now, Super Nintendo, just being that I just picked one up. We didn't actually get to this in the news, but
it's a fantastic answer. Oh yeah, we didn't do gaming and pickups.
Yeah, that's cool. I got a Super Nintendo within this time frame of the last 2 weeks, and I'm loving it. And I have a good few games for it already that are staples. But there's quite a lot of good games for that system.
Oh, yeah.
So that's probably my pick. I would say
it's
Super Nintendo.
It's a fantastic pick, man. I mean, honestly, that would be probably my answer, too, if I were to have to answer all these, which I'm glad I don't.
I know. There's so many questions that I'm like, don't ask me my answer to this.
Yeah, definitely. But it's funny. I've accumulated so much for the 64 and the Game Boy and the NES to where I have everything I like that I feel like Super Nintendo is logically next.
Yeah.
Because I have like 20-something games for it, but
there's some iconic games about for that console, man.
No question.
All right.
Great answer.
So, in the same ballpark, which console would you most want to own that you don't already? Money is not an issue.
I feel like I've been here before. Does it have to be from like a major developer, or can it be third party?
I don't care, man. It's whatever you want.
I would like to own either the Analog Pocket.
Okay.
That we talked about recently. That is up there. I would love to own that. The Analog Pocket. And also the Analog NT, which is basically the NES, the third party, very high quality from what I understand, HDMI NES. Either of those, man. Maybe the AVS, even more. I'm sorry, the Analog NT.
Yeah.
The Analog NT would probably be the top of the list because I have a Retron HD. It's all right. I mean, it's functional, but I want something that's, you know, perfect. Just exactly. The audio's a little off on the Retron. Colors are a little off. I want something that plays HDMI NES cartridges, beautiful resolution, everything as intended.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you ever gotten hands-on with a NES Classic? I know they don't play the cartridges necessarily.
No, I haven't gotten hands-on. I've gotten hands-on with every game on it.
Yeah, of course.
But haven't actually played one.
I just didn't know how. I imagine it, you know, being that it's ROMs, it probably looks pretty good and that it's official.
Totally, but I mean, the list of games on it, very impressive. But there's so many other titles, just so many other titles that, need to be experienced on the NES. You can't fit it. You can't wind it down to what they had on it, you know. And also, they put a lot of Nintendo first-party stuff that was okay. You know, some of the black box games aren't the best games. Let's just be honest. I mean, it was an older time, but I still would definitely want the Analog NT or the Analog Pocket. It's funny because they both come from Analog, but these are just the high-end, you know, like the high-end pieces of hardware for the systems I care about that I have quite the collection of games for. So
awesome.
That's my answer, man.
Perfect.
My next one for you, Tyler. What feature present in video games grabs you or pulls you in the most?
It's got to be a battle system, right? I mean, we just talked about it. I think that for me,
I mean, you were passionate about it, you know, when you talked about your lack of enjoyment for certain games. But now we're talking enthusiasm.
Definitely. I think it's got to be a complex battle system, a complex level up tree. I love the level up tree from Final Fantasy X. That's one of my favorites. I know some people didn't like it, but I love that.
Love it.
I think
it's fantastic.
Just those types of elements that you can get really technical with. I absolutely love the battle system in Triangle Strategy. There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of depth there. And for a modern game like that, like it blows away anything that I saw in Octopath, like for comparison, right? Just the amount of variability that you have in your party and the terrain and how it all just lines up so perfectly. I just love it. So yeah,
that's not downing Octopath.
No, it's a different genre. It's a different genre of RPG. These, I mean, it's called a tactical RPG for a reason.
Yes.
But that, man, just a complex mechanical system for battling. That's what pulls me in. Big time.
That's a great answer.
Or deck building.
You should definitely play Xenoblade because it goes very in depth with the skill trees and the customization as far as stats go, you know.
I live for that, man.
Maybe too much. That's what I like about it. There's almost too much. Like you're used to going through RPGs and upgrading your helmet and your your chest and your weapon. Man, this is like upgrading 30 things every time you get into the next city.
Yep.
And that's just reality. I love it though.
And I think about a game like Final Fantasy VII that had it was so open-ended with the upgrade system and everything. Like you could do anything with any character pretty much. And I love that.
Totally. Yeah, I love that freedom.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
If I hadn't talked about a battle system on one of the other questions, something else might have occurred to me, but that's so obviously the pick for me just because it's so painful. Like it's so painful when a game has a bad battle system that it makes me not want to play it. So I think that
like you
speaks
said, that's
volumes.
the point. Yeah. You don't want to get in the battle and be like, here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
That defeats the purpose. What you got next for me, man?
What type or genre of game would you most want to design? Current skill set, like notwithstanding, you know.
That's so funny because I actually had that as a question, not to cut you off. I had that as a question for you, but I asked it in place of the dream game because I thought that you might answer with the same thing. You might want to design your dream game, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
If I were going to design one, it had to be an original IP. It had to be totally original.
Not necessarily.
Ground up.
No, not necessarily.
I feel like that would only be logical, though. I can't just suddenly be sitting in some executive desk at Nintendo.
It's just what you want.
I think I would make like, and this is going to sound obvious at first, but probably like some type of retro style first-person shooter that had more casual elements in it. Kind of like how in older games, you know, you have your treacherous parts and you get into town, or RPGs across the board. You get into town and there's this break. It's like, finally, you know. They don't really put that in a lot of these newer or even the old retro FPS games. That like the calm in the middle. It's always action for the most part. And there's a lot of story-driven games that, there's some resting time. But they're not presented in the style that I'm talking. When I say like the retro FPS style, the 90s look. It'd be cool if there was just some like stop along the way elements in this. So I think I would make some type of new retro FPS that had some type of features in it that weren't present in any other really.
Like even a deck building element.
Deck building or something like farming, cooking, things like that. A lot of these aren't really in that style of game.
Definitely.
It's all straight to the point.
So how do we collaborate on a like a boomer shooter RPG deck building turn-based strategy game?
I don't know about turn-based. I mean, I want it to be real-time action. But no, you're on the right path though. Like my mind was following with you. But yeah, basically that would be it, dude.
The thought of a deck building boomer shooter makes me like crack up for some reason.
It's like your Gambit. You're throwing the cards and shooting them.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, that's what it would be. Just also NPC interaction. There's not a lot of that. Not a lot of other friendlies.
Yeah, you would want there to be a story element to it, and I mean that's almost like just like an RPG element, right?
That's basically the best way to put it. I don't know why I'm sitting here dancing around it. RPG mixed with retro FPS. But still with guns, though. I don't want it to be medieval simulation. You know what I mean? I want it to have guns.
We got to go back on the RPG servers or on the role-playing servers on Unreal Tournament 2004. See if we can get that working.
Yeah, dude. That was a good time.
Yeah. All right. What you got next?
I think it's time for me to ask another one. In terms of gaming, would you rather have grown up in a different time than we did, the 90s?
Oh, man, my knee jerk is to say no, right? Because and I feel like most people would say that. I think the next best time to grow up would have been probably like the early 80s, and just to see the technology changing, from NES to Super Nintendo, and just experiencing that. Like, that seems pretty magical to me. We kind of came in behind that, like the next step or two after that.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of like N64 time.
Yeah, we saw the Super Nintendo came out 2 or 3 years before we were born. So by the time we were young enough to play games like N64, PS1, that was what was relevant. Yeah.
So you want to be a kid in 85, you want to be 5 in 85,
something like that. And
that's because that's a sweet spot for me.
That would be my second choice after current, what we have already.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Actually, I want to be 5 years old in 85 when the NES drops.
Yeah, that'd be
and
sick.
Then be 9 years old for the
Super
Game
Nintendo.
Boy.
Yeah,
and then not even a teenager yet, 12 or something for the Super Nintendo. That'd be perfect. But you want to be younger with the Super Nintendo. You see, I got that experience though. I got to play so much Super Nintendo when I was a kid.
Yeah, I really wasn't into it until PS1 and N64. That was where the vast majority was.
Yeah.
All right.
I expected an immediate no.
Well, I want to have something to talk about, right?
Definitely.
I think that would be the next best thing. But obviously, the era we grew up in, pretty darn good.
Yeah, man. I'm not complaining.
As far as gaming. What game would you most enjoy playing as the main character? Now, I want to give the caveat here to make it interesting. I'm not going to exclude experiencing pain or damage or something. You have to factor that in.
So I have to be it's who would I prefer to be in their shoes?
Yeah, what would you most enjoy playing the game as the main character physically? You're in the game. But if you get shot, you're gonna feel it. Maybe not the same as in reality.
That's a good question.
So that has to be a factor. I'm not saying it would not be a violent game at all for that reason, but you just have to weigh that in.
I mean, how about Pokemon, dude? Like any Pokemon game, I don't have to hurt. The Pokemon does. First off, love animals, but that would just be the reality. Even still, they just faint, right?
Sure.
So yeah, hey, that's a cool world to live in anyway. But yeah, probably the Pokemon world. I mean, when you wake up, you have the most current Nintendo console in your room.
Yeah.
I got my games. I don't have to hurt. You can talk to people. I mean,
And it's
hey,
Pokemon.
dude. Yeah, so I'll be red or blue. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Straight up, bro.
It's like straightforward, but I mean, that's what we used to dream about, you know?
If you wouldn't have brought up the pain thing, I would have said like something badass.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, if it was something like Doom or whatever, like that's sick, right? But would you actually enjoy being the Doom guy?
No, I mean, like I would enjoy the rush for a little bit, but you have to exist there indefinitely. So I'm not trying to really do that.
All right. So if damage was not an issue, what was your answer?
Well, now I'm thinking about it more because I have to exist there, and it's only cool for so long.
Well, you wouldn't exist outside of the gameplay. So let's think about it that way.
Yeah, still sounds just as miserable. Let's go with red and blue from Pokemon.
All right, sounds good, man.
I think it just is what it is.
It is what it is. I mean, that's you know, that would probably be my answer too.
Animal Crossing's an easy one, but then again,
that sounds boring after a while.
After a while, you probably would get have an existential crisis.
100%, yeah. How long am I going to be on this freaking island?
But in Pokemon, you have like a world map, so you can at least travel.
Yeah.
You know. Well, who's going next here?
You.
Me. Okay. Let me ask you something, Tyler. What video game character would you most relate with if you had to pick?
I like how we're kind of on the same wavelength with these. Most relate with. That's interesting, though.
Who would you most relate with? It could be overall, or it could be on... I actually thought, just to help you out here, you can almost say it could be the story-driven element of that character in that game you relate with. Because I feel like that's where my mind would go if I was asked this. Kind of like I feel their mission here. I feel like why they're going through and doing what they're doing.
Totally. Link comes to mind for me, just because he seems kind of like an unlikely hero, kind of like a, you know, his contributions don't always, and this is going to sound way lame for me to say about myself, but like his contributions are kind of like subtle to the world around him in some ways, right? Like the way he influences the world and saves the world is not always overt in nature. Like not everybody in Hyrule or, you know, wherever he's at is going to understand how he saved the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're just going to be thankful to him.
Or they might not know Link had anything to do with it, you know?
Yeah, true.
That's more of what I'm saying. So, like, Link definitely
in that way, he's selfless, yeah.
Yeah, Link definitely comes to mind.
That's a great pick. I love that.
Beyond that, I'm going to just stick with Link, man. I don't want to overthink it.
I think it's a great answer. I don't think it needs to be overthought. He's doing right just for the sake of doing right, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like that.
He might be taking some blind advice, but he's rolling the dice, trusting odd entities.
And just
like
doing the
little
best that he
fairies,
can.
Yeah.
And he
he's
always
pretty
has
much helping whoever needs help.
He always has to be resourceful, right? Like he really has to solve a problem by finding something to solve that problem.
He's got to be smart. Yep.
So that's pretty cool to me.
Shout out to Link, man. We don't can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2.
I know. It's going to be awesome. My fiance is on a trip right now, and she asked what 4 games she would bring with her for her Switch. And I gave her Breath of the Wild as one. I was like, because I knew she was going to have a lot of downtime. She hasn't played it yet, but I was like, if you have, don't start this until you have a few hours, because you don't want to play it for 20 minutes to start. You're not going to get anywhere. Like, you really need a good few hours to get started in that game.
And that's the thing. I know it's so typical to be like the big dogs of the Switch, Breath of the Wild, Odyssey. Every time I'm asked a question where Odyssey comes into conversation, Breath of the Wild also pops into my mind.
Definitely.
But when it comes to kids, I feel like Odyssey is more friendly because there's a lot of utility and there's a lot of mechanics in Breath of the Wild that take a certain level of understanding.
Sure.
That's not to say a kid can't wrap their head around it.
No, but it's not intuitive as a Mario game.
Yeah, like it's not as pick up and play. But Breath of the Wild's always that's obviously the pickup when you get a Switch. If you don't have it, get it.
Definitely. Yeah, but that's the pick, man. Link.
That's totally understandable. I'm sure you have something else for me.
I do. I got 2 more questions written here.
As do I.
Number 9, which game does not get the love it deserves?
Which game does not get the love it deserves? I think about 2 games, really. And I know we've had multiple answers on these questions, but I feel like Super Mario RPG deserves more love, but I feel like that's because people haven't had exposure.
It's not gotten any attention.
And that's what I mean. Yeah, the people who've played it love it. But the people who want to play it can't play it very easily.
You can put that as my answer for what collectible would I want the most.
I thought you might even say that when you started on the Super Nintendo thing. I didn't think you were that passionate about it, though. But
I want to play the game. I would love to play it in its intended form. It would probably be one of your
favorites. Yep. But I'm losing track of where I was here, man.
Super Mario RPG doesn't get the love it deserves.
Yes, and also Perfect Dark. I know it got an Xbox remake. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't anything near what the original was, in my opinion. I mean, it's just a totally different game. But I feel like Perfect Dark doesn't get the love it deserves next to GoldenEye. I feel like Perfect Dark, without the GoldenEye tag on it, without the 007 affiliation, should have gotten, from a gamer standpoint, maybe some more fanfare, really.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I think the only thing that stopped it was the fact that it didn't have that mass appeal franchise attached to it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
The game, because I love GoldenEye to death, but I mean, the gameplay in Perfect Dark just feels superior. It feels like an upgrade. So yeah, Super Mario RPG, Perfect Dark. I think those are in the ballpark of games that need more love.
Awesome. What you got for me?
That's a good question in itself, but I only have 2 to pick from. So, what game would you say is the perfect marriage of audio and visual design? You can like graphics from one game, you can like music from another, but this is one title, all encompassing.
It's got to be Celeste, right?
You just love how it looks and love how it sounds.
And they're made for one another. Like the audio complements the visuals 100%.
It's a fantastic pick.
Yeah, I mean that's the first thing that comes to mind. Something else that came to mind just because is Okami. You know, the visuals in that game are incredible. The audio is incredible too. I mean, that's definitely, deserving of mention as well.
Definitely, man. That's a great picks. But this is final question, man.
Do you think you'll ever stop playing video games?
No.
Never in your life?
Never in my life until I can't physically do so or mentally do so. I've thought about that from time to time. As people get older, they outgrow things. I just don't see it, bro. I just don't see it. You know, we're moving into our 30s and not there quite yet, but I mean, I just don't feel it fading. I don't.
That's fair.
Otherwise, I mean, why would we be here right now?
It's where we want to be.
I mean, look at this. Do you think it's going to go away?
I don't know. Luckily, I don't have to answer.
Well, we could talk off cam, off mic,
I don't
whatever
know.
about it.
It's hard for me to say. It's one of those questions that I'm glad I don't have to answer because I don't know. Like, it's
I
easy.
just feel so. It's like music to me. I just don't ever see a lack of appreciation or you know, a want to spend time on these things.
In general, I agree. The only counterpoint that I think of is just having kids and having such an incredibly busy day-to-day life that you simply don't have time. But I don't think that counts really because
that's like saying I'm not going to watch films anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you're probably going to watch films the rest of your life from time to time, right?
I mean, yeah.
It's one of those things to me. I mean, it's just like watching films or TV series.
Yeah, and I agree. And well, that's what I was getting to, right? Like, just because you don't have time for something for even years, right, doesn't mean you don't want to do it and doesn't mean you'll never do it again. Yeah. So, yeah, I have a hard time picturing a world where I don't, where video games aren't part of my life in some way. For sure. Mm-hmm. My last one for you, it's so funny because we just talked about film. But what game do you personally think would be most worthy of a film or series adaptation? A lot of times this is a bad idea. Maybe there's something that you think would be a good idea. That's the point of the question. Metal Gear Solid. It's basically already a series of films, right? I mean, you could take that game and turn it into an incredible, like, anime, to be honest, like, or, you know, live action. I don't know. There's some elements of it that would really be hard to parse in live action, like some of the bosses that are just these surreal abominations. Like, I don't necessarily want to see that in CGI, but like as an anime or some sort of animated style, but like a gritty adult, you know, story and stylization, that to me would be amazing. I should have expected something of the sort. But I mean, hey, dude, you're right. It's already, I mean, it's basically I mean, it's basic. Yeah. It's ready. It's ready. Like, ready, you can make a movie out of what is there, or like a series for sure. Which people do. Yeah. But you know, I'm talking silver screen here. No, I'm with you. Or like, you know, streaming service. You could definitely port it into a show or a series of movies quite easily. Yeah. I don't know if movies would work because it would take forever to tell the story and get all like, no, like even a 6-film franchise wouldn't get all of the information out. That's why I said film or series, because it would have to be like a 10 episode, like a 10 season series of TV shows, like to even come close. And in the, I don't know, there's just so much going on in those games. Well, I think it's a great answer. That was 20 questions. That was a big one, but that was awesome. How you feeling? How you feeling about it? That's it's so nice to have, to really just have to think. Like, I don't know if it's the best content to just sit here and go, but for me, like, just having the creative juices flowing to think about these things, I love it. I don't think we sat idle too much, though. I think a lot of our answers are a lot quicker than we probably thought they would be. Probably, yeah. I was really hoping there wouldn't be a stumper where I just couldn't come up with anything. Yeah, which there wasn't. So we made it through clear, bro. That's the 20.